They didn't whisper it. They didn't soften it. They said it clearly, like a verdict already decided. Leave. Leave the room. Leave the job. Leave the dream. Leave the version of yourself that dared to take up space. She stood there, heart pounding, knowing this moment would define her. Walking away would be easier, quieter, safer. But something inside her refused to bow. She had been told her whole life when to step back, when to be silent, when to disappear. This time, she didn't argue. She simply stayed. She stayed when every eye expected her to turn around, when the room felt smaller because of her presence, when her name was spoken like a mistake that needed correcting. She stayed not because she was stubborn, but because she was tired of being erased. For years, she had learned the art of leaving conversations where she wasn't heard, leaving opportunities she was told weren't for her, leaving pieces of herself behind so others could feel comfortable. Staying felt unfamiliar, almost dangerous. But for the first time, it felt honest. They thought telling her to leave would end the story. They didn't realize it was the beginning. She remembered all the times she had been warned not to dream too loudly. Don't aim too high. Don't challenge what already exists. She remembered how often strength in a woman was labeled as attitude, how confidence was mistaken for disrespect. She had learned to shrink without being asked, to apologize without knowing why. But that day, something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet decision settling deep in her chest. Staying didn't mean she wasn't afraid. Fear sat beside her like an old companion. Fear of being judged. Fear of being punished. Fear of being alone. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the refusal to let fear make your choices. She stayed even when her hands trembled, even when her voice felt stuck in her throat, even when she wondered if this choice would cost her everything. People began to test her resolve. Cold shoulders replaced conversation. Silence became a weapon. She felt the weight of being unwelcome, of being tolerated rather than accepted. But she didn't respond with bitterness. She responded with consistency. She showed up, again and again and again. Each day she stayed. She reclaimed something that had once been taken from her, the belief that she had a right to exist exactly where she was. They expected her to break. Instead, she built endurance. They expected her to beg. Instead, she worked. They expected her to disappear quietly. Instead, she became impossible to ignore. Her staying wasn't loud rebellion. It was quiet resistance. It was waking up early when no one applauded. It was learning when no one taught her. It was standing alone when no one stood beside her. She understood something most people never do. You don't always win by leaving the battlefield. Sometimes you win by refusing to surrender your ground. There were nights she questioned herself, nights when exhaustion whispered that leaving would finally bring peace. But she had learned that peace built on self-betrayal never lasts. Leaving would have been another chapter of running. Staying was a chapter of becoming. And becoming is always uncomfortable. Slowly, the energy around her changed. Not because people suddenly became kind, but because her presence no longer sought permission. She spoke without shrinking. She listened without fear. She carried herself like someone who belonged, because she did. The same people who once dismissed her began to hesitate, not out of respect at first, but out of uncertainty. They were no longer sure she could be moved. She wasn't trying to prove them wrong. She was proving herself right. Her story wasn't about defiance for the sake of pride. It was about dignity, about choosing not to abandon herself when the world made it clear she was inconvenient. She learned that staying doesn't mean tolerating abuse. It means honoring your worth. It means knowing the difference between a door that needs to be closed and a space that needs to be claimed. And the most powerful part? She didn't stay forever to be accepted. She stayed long enough to grow strong. long enough to see clearly, long enough to realize that her value was never tied to their approval. One day, when she finally chose to leave, it wasn't because she was pushed out. It was because she had outgrown the place that once tried to shrink her. But that first decision, to stay when she was told to leave, changed everything. It taught her that her presence was not a mistake, that her voice did not need permission, that her strength was not something to apologize for. She stayed, and in doing so, she found herself.